There's something you carry that was never truly yours. It's a concrete feeling that appears before you even begin to think. That pattern you try to change, but it always comes back. That resistance to certain changes that rationally make sense, but your body rejects without explanation. That fear that arises when life is almost too good, when you're close to something you really wanted, and some part of you whispers, "Careful, this won't last." This video isn't about what you imagined when you heard the title. You heard that someone in your family who is in heaven wants to tell you something. And you came here with an expectation, curiosity, perhaps skepticism, maybe a small, discreet hope that you will hear something that makes sense in relation to what you are experiencing now. You will hear it. But before that, you need to understand where this message comes from. And to understand, you need to know something about Taurus that is rarely said with this clarity. Taurus is Earth, not as a poetic symbol, but as a real function. The Earth not only holds what is alive now, but also what came before. The roots that rotted and became fertilizer for what came after, the seeds that have not yet found the light, and also, buried deep, the stories that began in past generations and never came to an end. What does it mean to say that someone from your family who is in heaven wants to tell you something? It doesn't mean a voice in your dream tonight. It doesn't mean a spectacular sign falling out of nowhere. It means something more subtle and therefore much more disturbing. The warning is already happening. It's already inside you, in the choices you make without thinking, in the things you keep without being able to explain why, in the fear that appears when life starts to get too good, that strange discomfort that something is going to break right now. Have you ever had that fear? The one that arises when everything is going well, when you're close to something you've always wanted, and some part of you says, "Wait, this isn't for me." This fear has a name, and that name is not yours. Taurus is born with a capacity that seems like a gift and sometimes weighs like a burden, the ability to absorb, not just experiences, not just physical sensations, the smells, the textures, the tastes, but people. Those you love, you carry in your body. Those you've lost, you keep in your habits. The grandmother who lived her whole life afraid that the money would run out. The father who worked tirelessly and still felt it was never enough. The mother who loved with all her heart, but could never receive without a little suspicion. You carry them with you, not as a memento, as a pattern that lives on. And here's what changes everything. When Taurus resists change, when Taurus clings to the familiar even if it hurts, when it finds security in routines that no longer serve, that's not stubbornness. It's not weakness, it's loyalty. A loyalty so ancient, so deeply rooted in the body that it doesn't seem like a choice. It seems like nature. It's as if there's a contract you never read but signed anyway. The signing happened sometime in childhood, when you learned what it meant to be loved in that family, what it meant to be safe, what it meant to belong without having to justify yourself. And here's a question you may never have asked yourself before. These patterns you call personality, the difficulty in letting go of what hurts, the resistance, the way of holding on to everything until the weight becomes unbearable, when did they begin? Not in your story. In the life of someone who came long before you, there's no quick answer to this question. And you know it, because Taurus never rushes into anything. But the question lingers in the air, and that's exactly what matters. It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book, The Divine Path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose. Not as a collection of predictions, not as a ready-made map of what will happen, but as a tool to understand what lies deepest, that which Taurus feels in the body but rarely manages to put into words. The relationship of your nature with what you inherited without choosing, with what you carry, with what perhaps is ready to be put to rest. You are in this moment right now, processing something that didn't have a name before, recognizing in yourself a pattern you've always called your way of being, and beginning to realize that it may have started long before you. This is the realization that most people try to quickly push away because it's uncomfortable. But Taurus doesn't run from discomfort when it's real. You stay. And that's why this is the right time. Not later. Not when life gets calmer. Now, while this recognition is still alive within you, the link is in the first pinned comment. But be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. And while you're still within this realization, tell me in the comments, what emotional pattern do you most recognize in yourself and that you also saw in someone in your family? Write it down, not for the audience, for yourself. Taurus stores everything in the body before processing it mentally. This isn't weakness, it's architecture. When you feel something very strong, without being able to explain where it came from, when a smell transports you entirely to a moment before you decide whether you want to go, when a simple situation awakens an emotion that seems too big for what's happening, that's the archive opening. Taurus's body is an archive, and this archive has layers. The first layer is your own memories, the experiences you've lived, processed, that have shaped who you are. The second, deeper layer is the memories of those you've loved, the impressions left by those who were close enough to you to influence how you experience the world. And there's a third layer, even deeper, one that has no image, no narrative, only sensation, a weight, a resistance, an inexplicable certainty about how certain things work. This third layer came from someone you never met personally, or someone you met when you were too young to realize what was being passed down. These are the grandparents, the great-grandparents, the entire lineage that went through crises, losses, new beginnings, and emerged from it all with a set of beliefs about what is safe, about what is possible, about what people like you can have. And these beliefs have come to you, not as an inherited legacy, as the air you've breathed since day one. Think about how your family viewed money. Was there lightness and abundance, or was there fear, restraint, the feeling that it was never enough? Regardless of which side it is, both leave marks on Taurus in very specific ways. Because Taurus, ruled by Venus, absorbs beliefs about resources and value directly into the emotional realm. What begins as a belief becomes behavior. What was behavior becomes a pattern. The pattern, after years, becomes identity. You didn't choose this, and whoever passed it on to you didn't consciously choose it either. That's how lineage works, not with declared intention, but with silent repetition. And repetition, for Taurus, is practically a law of nature. But something begins to happen when Taurus's life reaches a real turning point, when something truly changes in career, love, health, family structure, when something that was firm suddenly isn't anymore. It's in these moments that the deepest archive opens. It's in these moments that dreams become more intense, that certain memories return unbidden, that you think of someone who's gone, and you can't quite understand why at that specific moment. And sometimes the person who comes to mind isn't random. It's exactly the one who went through a crossroads similar to the one you're facing now. Because there is a language that the earth uses with those who have roots there, not with words, with patterns, with coincidences too dense to be accidental, with that shiver that has no rational explanation, with the feeling that something was placed in front of you on purpose, an encounter, a conversation, a video like this, at the exact moment you were ready to listen. When the earth speaks, Taurus feels. The question remains, what do you do with what you feel? Now we've arrived at the heart of it all, the point that makes Taurus look away, because facing it requires an honesty that goes beyond what's comfortable. There's a pattern that someone in your family carried throughout their life. It might have been their way of dealing with money, working hard and never feeling it was enough, or spending to fill a void that no purchase could resolve. It might have been their way of loving, intensely, but with an emotional distance that never fully closed. It might have been their relationship with their own body, ignoring their health until it was no longer possible to ignore it. It might have been the difficulty in asking for help, in showing vulnerability, in admitting they were sinking. This pattern didn't die with this person. Patterns don't die when the body is gone. They seek the next available space in the lineage. And Taurus, with all its capacity for absorption, with all its silent loyalty, is usually exactly that space. Not because you are weak. On the contrary, Taurus absorbs because it loves deeply, because the emotional bond with those who came before is real, it's physical, it's felt in the heart even when that person has been gone for years. You keep that person in the way you do things every day, in the way you respond when someone disappoints you, in the way you react when life tests your structure. And sometimes she also holds on to her pain, the belief that limited her, the dream she never managed to fulfill, not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know she was allowed to. The warning that someone in your family who is in heaven wants to give you is not about something that will happen. It's about something that is already happening. It's about the furrow, that path that rainwater automatically follows because it was opened before, because the terrain already sloped in that direction, because it is the path of least resistance. You may be following in someone else's footsteps, not consciously, not guiltily, but in a way that is costing you something you feel in your body, even if you can't name the cost. And that person, from where they are now, knows. And they want you to know that the furrow isn't the destination. It's just a path that's been left open. And paths that are left open can be redirected when you decide to stop following autopilot and start looking at where you're actually going. What has just been said here is the kind of recognition that Taurus takes time to digest. Not because it's difficult to understand, it's because it's difficult to face without something stirring inside. You might be wondering, what if it's true? What if the pattern I struggle most to change isn't entirely mine? What do I do with that? This is exactly the moment the digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose, was created for. Not to give you ready-made answers, but to give you the tools Taurus needs to stop following paths that aren't theirs, to transform inheritance into conscious choice, to go beyond the past without having to deny where they came from. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. So how does Taurus get to this point? How can someone with so much solidity, with so much capacity to build and sustain, end up carrying what isn't theirs? Because of the most beautiful and most complicated thing about Taurus: loyalty. Taurus doesn't abandon. That's not the way of this sign. When Taurus loves, they love deeply. And those deep roots don't come loose because the wind blew stronger, because the season changed, because time passed. But there's a side to this loyalty that's rarely discussed, because it seems contradictory to everything we admire about Taurus. Taurus is also loyal to the people who have passed, to the patterns those people left behind, to the ways of seeing the world that were inherited along with their eyes, their voice, their specific way of pausing before responding. And change feels like betrayal. This is hard to admit out loud, but you know it's true. When you think about being different from someone you love deeply, there's an unease that goes beyond logic, as if growing beyond where they left off is a way of saying their life was wrong, as if moving on is a way of leaving them behind once and for all. And so Taurus stays. Not physically. Taurus can change cities, jobs, relationships, but it stays in the emotional pattern. It stays in the limiting belief. It stays in the posture that is familiar enough to seem safe, even when it no longer protects anything. Imagine a plant that, after the window has been closed, continues to grow in the direction where there was light. not because the light is still there, but because the plant's body has learned that direction and doesn't know any other. It grows in the direction of the memory of the light, not the light itself. Taurus sometimes grows toward a window that has been closed for a long time, driven by the memory of where there was warmth and safety, not by its presence now. And as it goes in that direction, it gets further and further away from the window that is open, the one it hasn't yet allowed itself to discover. The question that arises here is too delicate to be rushed. What does it mean to honor those who were, without needing to repeat what they lived through? Is it possible to love one's roots without being trapped in the land that formed them? This tension between the loyalty that defines Taurus and the freedom it needs to truly grow is one of the deepest issues this sign will face in life. And it's not resolved with willpower. It's resolved with understanding. The digital book, The Divine Path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose, offers Taurus a path to transform loyalty from an invisible chain into a real choice, so that you can deeply love those who came before without needing to be a continuation of the pain they carried. To honor the root without letting it prevent you from growing towards the light that is still available. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. So, what does someone in your family who is in heaven really mean? Because there's a version of this warning that we imagine. Dramatic, urgent, full of signs impossible to ignore. And then there's the real version, the quiet one, the one that arrives slowly, the one that sometimes takes years to be heard, not because the person on the other side isn't speaking, but because the person here wasn't ready to listen yet. The real warning isn't about danger. It's not beware of what's going to happen. It's much more personal than that. That's it, stop here. Don't continue what I haven't finished. Don't carry what I couldn't put down. Think of that person. The one who comes to mind when you think of family and loss, the one whose absence still has a shape, still weighs heavily, still appears in the moments you least expect it. Think of what they carried, the pattern they never managed to change despite wanting to, the thing they said they would resolve when the time was better, and the time never came to be better. The dream they kept for when the conditions were right, and the conditions never were. Now think about yourself. About what you're putting off the same way, about the pattern you repeat without realizing exactly how, about the change you'll make when things stabilize, and things never fully stabilize because life isn't like that. Are you seeing the continuity? It's not a coincidence. It's not something inexplicable. It's simply the way the lineage works when no one consciously decides to interrupt the cycle. And the warning, the real warning from those in heaven, is a plea to interrupt, not an accusation, a request. Because those who have been through it know things that those who are here are still learning. They know how much it costs to carry a pattern that solves nothing. They know what is lost when life passes by while we wait for the right time to truly live. And they want, from where they are now, for you not to have to learn this same lesson in the same harsh way. You're not betraying anyone by doing things differently. You're fulfilling a purpose. The story that began before you demands a new chapter, and only you can write that chapter. This request from those who have passed, not to repeat the same mistakes, to go further, to write what they couldn't, deserves more than just good intentions. It deserves concrete action. And Taurus knows well the difference between a beautiful idea and something that actually changes things in everyday life. The digital book, The Divine Path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose, is the next real step. A guide for Taurus to understand, with the depth this sign needs, how to transform the recognition that is active now into lasting change. How to receive the warning and actually change course. How to honor the lineage by going beyond it, without guilt and without betrayal. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. The earth holds everything. That's its nature. It doesn't choose what it absorbs. It receives everything that falls upon it, everything that is planted in it, everything that finds rest in it. But the earth also liberates. That's the side that's rarely remembered. The same earth that holds the seed, that keeps the root firm during the winter, that preserves what could be lost. That same earth knows when to let go, when to let the seed open. When the root has created enough soil for the plant to grow beyond the point where it was planted. Taurus is like that, with a capacity for retention that no other sign can match, and with an ability, when the time comes, to release what has been stored in a way that transforms not only their own life, but everything around them. The message from those in heaven isn't an added burden on your shoulders, it's actually a liberation. Permission granted by someone who loved you before you were born, throughout your life, and from wherever they are now. Permission to go further, to not repeat, to write the chapter they couldn't write. You're not betraying anyone by growing beyond where they left off. You're completing something. You're being the answer to a prayer that was asked long before you existed, in generations you'll never meet personally, but who shaped every trait of who you are. The earth preserves, but the tree grows, and the tallest tree does not forget its roots. It carries them, transformed into a trunk, into a structure, into a silent foundation for all that is yet to grow. Taurus understands this before they have the words to explain it, and